All right, we're going to read from Scripture. I'm going to read it aloud to you because it's a little bit longer piece of Scripture today. And you're going to see it's probably not one that's easy for us to read aloud together. So we're going to I'm going to read the story, probably one that is familiar for you, but we're going to get into this over the next few weeks. So as the boys grew up, this is referring to Jacob and Esau. As the boys grew up, Esau became a skillful hunter. He was an outdoorsman, but Jacob had a quiet temperament, preferring to stay at home. Isaac loved Esau because he enjoyed eating the wild game Esau brought home, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Next. I'll let you do this for me, yeah. As the boys grew up, Esau became there we go. One day when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau arrived home from the wilderness, exhausted and hungry, and he said to Jacob, "I'm starved. Give me some of that red stew." This is how Esau got his other name, Edom, which means red. "All right," Jacob replied, "but trade your rights as the firstborn son." "Look, I'm dying of starvation," said Esau. "What good is my birthright to me now?" But Jacob said, "First you must swear that your birthright is mine." So Esau swore an oath, thereby selling all his rights as the firstborn to his brother Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and lentil stew. Esau ate the meal, then got up and left, and he showed contempt for his rights as the firstborn. Anybody remember that story? It's one of those Sunday school stories. And we're going to unpack that one a little bit today. But over the next few weeks, we're going to do something different. We've not done it this way before in terms of our teaching series. But we're going to follow a person. And so we're going to follow one person's story in the Old Testament. In this case, it's the life of Jacob. And so most of you probably know at least of Jacob. You know some of the Sunday school stories. One of the ones we just read there is one of the ones that you would cross in Sunday school. Back in the old days, you saw on the flannel graph. Anybody? And so a couple of the other stories you might know is Jacob wrestling with God. That showed up on your flannel graph somewhere probably. And also, if you recall, the vision with the angels ascending and descending from heaven, that would be one that people are like, oh, yeah, that was Jacob. And so there's a couple better known stories, and maybe some of this is new to you. That's okay too. But what we're going to do is kind of walk through the life of Jacob and just follow him. And so one of the things that we're going to pick up on right away and that you're going to notice. So one of the things we do in our Sunday school stories, and this isn't wrong, it's just the way we do it, we kind of sanitize them for children. And then we make it into one life lesson, kind of a simple teaching point, and it's valuable for how we approach kids, but sometimes when we sanitize the stories, we lose some things. And so here's what we're going to do. We're going to kind of take this beyond your Sunday school stories, and we're going to get into the unsanitized and grimy parts of Jacob's story as well. So let me start with this in case you aren't familiar. Jacob is an important figure in the Old Testament. So he is the grandson of Abraham. So Abraham, and then Abraham's son was Isaac. This is the father of Jacob. So you've got Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And in fact, these would be the big three, starting with Abraham, who God's promises to his chosen people would flow. And so multiple times in the Bible, actually, God is referred to as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so one of those instances was Moses standing in front of the burning bush. And so as he sees this bush burning in the desert and walks up, God speaks to him out of this bush, and he declares, "I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." So what I want you to catch is like Jacob is a big one, right? This is one of the big three through whom God's promises would flow. And while he is an important person, he was also a very flawed person. And we're going to see that. We're going to see a man whose life is a struggle from the very beginning. He experiences more than his share of sorrow and heartache, much of which he brought on himself. He was a bit of a wrecking ball. So on your little title slide there on your thing, you see the wrecking ball. That's what that is about. He did a lot of damage to relationships. Another way I would describe it, and this is the picture I've got on the screen, is he was a guy who burned a lot of bridges. And so that's a really familiar phrase, right? The idea of burning bridges. And that familiar phrase goes back to, it's actually associated with a military practice, which way back as armies would cross a bridge to attack, they would destroy the bridge behind them. And while you may think there was some strategy to hinder the enemy, it was actually a strategy to keep their own troops from feeling like they could retreat. And so when they burned the bridge, it was basically saying, retreat is not an option. Here's the battle, and this is the only way forward. And so there's no going back. That bridge is burned. Now, we've moved that on to kind of describe when you do something that can't be taken back or that does permanent damage, that destroys relationships. You can do that with a person. You can do that in your family. You can do that with an organization, right? People burn bridges. Basically, it's the idea of you leave or do something that so badly destroys that you've burned that bridge and you cannot cross back over that. Like, that cannot be undone, and the only way is forward. So let me just give you a quick instance. So many years ago, I was a pastor in Michigan with the Christian Missionary Alliance, and one of our area pastors, he was a church planter, and I don't know the whole story, but he had to be removed. So it's pretty significant when they remove a pastor. As far as I know, there was no immorality, but something happened that he had to be removed, and he was not happy about this removal, obviously. And so we had every year this annual gathering of all of our area pastors, and this guy had been removed, and he shows up at the annual gathering to basically make his case, and he interrupts what was going on, shouting from standing in the aisle in the middle, and just shouts and is trying to make his case, and it just became a thing, obviously. And so they were gently trying to say, hey, this isn't the right time or the place, we can have a conversation. He just continued to shout from the middle of the room. And then it was said, okay, so here's how this is going to go. You can stand there and shout, and we will have police come and escort you out, or you can leave on your own. And it ended with the police coming in to escort out a fellow pastor of ours and a friend from that room. But here's what I want you to catch from all of that. Like, I don't know what he thought was going to happen in that situation, but here's what we all immediately knew. I don't know what justice you thought was going to happen. I don't know if you thought you were going to job back or a church back, but you just burned bridges because you just pretty much closed the door on any opportunity to get all of that back in the way you handled that. So, I mean, like, we can give 100,000 million examples, right, of burning bridges like this. And this is what we're talking about. And this is the kind of person Jacob was. He was the kind of the guy that burned bridges. And so you'll see it in our first story, and you'll actually see it multiple times as we go through. And so here's Jacob, this guy who's a wrecking ball or the bridge burner, however you want to look at it. And he was known to be a deceiver and a manipulator. This is what he was known as. Here's where I want us to start. That we are a lot like Jacob. Now, if you're like, hold up, deceiver and manipulator, like, I don't know if that's how I describe myself. Sure, I've got some issues. And it's not really being a deceiver or manipulator where we're all like him. But Jacob is a person with obvious strengths and obvious weaknesses who is honestly trying to walk with God. That describes us, doesn't it? Like we have obvious strengths that we bring to the table, obvious weaknesses and brokenness that we bring to the table, and many of us are simply, honestly, in our brokenness, trying to walk with God. And so as we follow Jacob's story, then we're going to get to see it play out, right? So we'll see him struggle with faith and trusting God. We'll see a man who is really not good at waiting on God. Is there anybody who's ever felt that one? Like not good at waiting on God. But here's the thing. He's incredibly patient when he's executing his plan. Like he is patient and can wait it through. He is most comfortable trying to make things happen, not waiting for things to happen. And his go-to tools are manipulation and deception. And so as you follow his story, like he cheats and he gets cheated, he deceives and he gets deceived, he ticks people off and people tick him off. Welcome to Jacob's story. It's the story of so many of our lives. This is why I use the picture of the wrecking ball. And it's funny, right? One of the big three, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And this guy did some damage. And so that's what we're going to look at over the next few weeks. Here's the other thing I want you to know about Jacob as we get started. Like it wasn't just Jacob that was a mess. His family was a mess. And you're like, wait. Like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Like that's not a mess. That's like a holy line. They're a mess. And you're going to see, again, as we walk through the story, that this is a guy who's not just messed up himself, but he comes from a dysfunctional family. And so again, what we get to watch then is God's plan unfolding in the life of a messed up man who comes from a dysfunctional family. And if you're saying, wait, that's me, like, this is why I love Scripture, that it puts this stuff in here, that we get to see God use a messed up man from a dysfunctional family, and some of it can say, hey, I'm messed up and I come from a dysfunctional family. Maybe God can use me too. Here's the other thing I want you to see, though, and this is the tension we're going to carry as we go through this. So even as we say God uses him, a messed up guy from a dysfunctional family, we also see that he creates a lot of his own messes, that he creates problems, he burns bridges, he is a wrecking ball. And so it gets complicated and dicey sometimes, but still, God is at work. So that's where we're going. Welcome to the life of Jacob. So we're going to get into the soup story today, the story that we read at the start. But let's back up before the soup story so we kind of see the whole account. And so this is in chapter 25 of Genesis in verse 19. This is the account of the family of Isaac, the son of Abraham. So when Isaac was 40 years old, he married Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean from Paddan Aram, and the sister of Laban, the Aramean. Isaac pleaded with the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was unable to have children, and the Lord answered Isaac's prayer, and Rebekah became pregnant with twins. But the two children struggled with each other in her womb, and so she asked the Lord about this. Why is this happening to me? So catch the flow of the story with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So Abraham, this is Jacob's grandfather, was the original one to whom the original one who received the promise that you will be a great nation and God is going to bless your people and your lineage. But there was just one major obstacle to that blessing. Abraham and his wife Sarah were unable to have children. So like when you're promised that you're going to be a great nation, like, okay, so we need that first one so we can have this promise. Because obviously without children, there are no descendants. And so finally, Sarah gives birth to Isaac. So the promise moves forward one generation. And then you get to Isaac and Rebekah, and now Rebekah is barren. She's unable to have children. So again, it's a promise stopper, right? Like there's this promise that through Abraham's line, but now we're just one step in, and now Rebekah is unable to have children. And so we read this, that Isaac pleaded with the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was unable to have children. And I want to stop and just see what this really means when it says he pleaded with the Lord. So it's easy for us to read this and pass this by like, well, yeah, of course he pleaded, but we don't catch the full weight of it. So if you go back to verse 20, we learned that they were married, that Isaac and Rebekah were married when he was 40, and they had their twins when he was 60. Just stop and process that one for a moment. Can you imagine having twins at 60? So when you read this little statement that Isaac pleaded with the Lord on behalf of his wife, it sounds like a prayer that he prayed for a little bit, but it's a prayer that was prayed for almost 20 years. That's what he pleaded about. And that's how long that took. It's not a small amount of time to be waiting, is it? Like, think of what it means to pray like that for 20 years. That means there's times of believing and times of doubting, times of trusting, times of not trusting, times of wrestling, times of hoping, times of wondering, times where you feel certain, times where you have questions. Like, that's what's captured in that prayer. And then finally, after 20 years, Rebekah is pregnant and hope awakens, and the promise made to Abraham, and now that carries on through Isaac, is alive. But Rebekah immediately notices something is different in this pregnancy from what I've seen others experience. There's a lot of movement in her belly. And it feels like something more than the cute stretches of a small child, right? It feels almost like a battle in the womb, like a jostling. And she doesn't know it yet, but there are two babies. She's having twins. And so here's what we read. The two children struggled with each other in the womb. So remember the car trips when two kids would struggle each other in the back seat? Like, he touched me, she's in my space, that kind of thing. Well, this is these two little guys in the womb, like pushing at each other. So this is what she's living with, this jostling, this wrestling in her womb. And so she knows, like, okay, this is an unusual amount of activity that's going on here. And so she goes to ask the Lord, like, why is this happening to me? Like, what is going on here? And so that's when she gets the first surprise, like, surprise, you're having twins. Okay. And then here's what we read. The Lord told her, the sons in your womb will become two nations. From the very beginning, the two nations will be rivals, and one nation will be stronger than the other, and your older son will serve your younger son. So this is what's happening, and this is the sign in her womb of what is to come. You've got two rivals from the very beginning. I mean, like the very beginning, in the womb, two rivals. And then she's told that her older son will serve the younger son, which is unusual. It would completely bypass all of the cultural norms and expectations, because the cultural norm, the expectation would be that the older son would take over the household when the father dies. He would be the one that would lead the family, and the older son would receive a double portion of the inheritance. So let's just put it in like real world terms with round numbers. So let's say there's an inheritance of 3 million. The older son gets 2 million, and the younger son gets 1 million. So imagine how frustrating that is for Jacob. Like, you're 6 minutes ahead of me. Like, for all intents and purposes, we are the same age, and yet you get all of these benefits because you're the oldest, right? So here's what she learns when she inquires about what's going on in her belly. So there's going to be continual conflict. This is one of the things you're already sensing. The two will become two nations. One will be dominant, so one nation will be stronger than the other, and there will be a role reversal where the older will serve the younger. And so finally, the time comes to give birth, and yes, she does have twins, and you immediately get the picture that these are two very different boys, and that they are going to be very different and battle it out from the beginning. So here's what's interesting as we read verse 25. Well, I didn't put it up there, but listen to this one. The first one, this is Esau, was very red at birth and covered with thick hair, like a fur coat. So, Sasquatch. Like, what is that? Right? And so they named him Esau. And then the other twin was born with his hand grasping Esau's heel. And so they named him Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when the twins were born. So here we're told that Jacob was literally, as an infant, coming out of the womb, clinging to the heel, like trying to get first. So there's this struggle from the beginning. So Jacob would get this name that would literally mean heel grabber, and would also come to mean, you ready? Deceiver. So here are these two twins, and they are about as opposite as you can get. You've got Esau, who was an outdoors kind of man, and you've got Jacob, who's a quiet guy, just happy to be at home. You've got Esau, kind of like the manly man, picture strong, athletic, and agile, and you've got Jacob, more of the thinking man, picture calculating, cunning, and deceptive. Esau would always lean on his strength. Jacob would always lean on his wits. Esau would get angry but get over it. Jacob would hold on to grudges for years. So two really different men struggling from the beginning, and that struggle would only intensify. And so to add to that conflict, I don't know if you noticed this when we read it aloud, to add to the tension of it all, did you notice when I read it from the beginning that Isaac and Rebekah had chosen sides? So we read this, that Isaac loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. So remember we said dysfunctional family? Like, how's that for a mess from the beginning? So you've got Isaac and Esau, dad's strong man who brought back good meat to eat. And you've got Rebekah with Jacob, mom's quiet boy who liked to be at home with her. So that's the family dynamics that they come into. Makes me wonder, so what were yours? Right? That you can point to and say, that was messed up. That was odd. That left a mark. And that does not disqualify you from having God's blessing or his hand in your life. So here, everything changes, though, with the event, right? One of those defining moments where something happened and the trajectory of everything changes. Well, for them, that would be soup. It would be the soup that changed everything. And so this is what we read at the start, and it's this wild story like, what? What just happened there? And so I want to talk for a few minutes about what happened. So again, you've got Esau. He's this successful hunter. Whether he came in from an unsuccessful day of hunting or what, or didn't want to prepare a meal, whatever the case, he comes in hungry and exhausted, possibly frustrated, but not a great frame of mind. And so he walks in and he smells this stew. And he's like, what is that? That smells amazing. And it's like immediately when he smells it, nothing else matters. And so he says to Jacob, he says, hey, quick, let me have some of the red stew. I'm famished. So he comes in, he's hungry, he wants to eat, and it's the only thing right now that he cares about. So I don't know for sure. This is me speculating. This isn't in your Bible, but this is me speculating. I doubt that when he smelled that, he thought, I would trade my birthright for a bowl of that soup. But here's what's interesting. Apparently, Jacob was thinking that, right? I bet he would trade his birthright for a bowl of this soup right now. So here's what you can assume, just by Jacob being ready to throw this proposal down, that he has thought about this. Not making soup, but he's thought about the opportunity to get that birthright. He's been watching for a time and a place and an opportunity. He's been patiently waiting for the right chance to take advantage. So he's had his eye on this birthright. He's the heel grabber, right? Just hanging on, trying to get ahead. He's the deceiver. He's going to find a way. And so now there's this really unlikely opportunity because Esau comes in starving and says, quick, let me have some of the red stew. I'm famished. And Jacob pounces on the moment with this ridiculous demand. Like, when we read it, like it's so wild and so out there that you have to wonder, like, he had to be kidding. Like, he had to throw that out like kidding, like, well, it'll cost you your birthright, but not really thinking that would come to anything because it's so wild and out there. Like, here's what's funny. So Jacob has been thinking about this, and what has been in his heart comes out in the open with this situation. Whether he was kidding or whatever, like, it all came out. Like, he's been working on this. He's been trying to figure an angle to play. And so it comes out in the open. He's like, hey, I am happy to share some of this amazing and delicious soup with you. And all it's going to cost you is your birthright. Just give your rights as the firstborn to me, and you can enjoy all the soup you want. And so we read it, and we're like, that is so dumb. Like, who would take that offer? Like, even if he said the whole pot of stew is yours, you're like, dumb. Like, don't do it. Even if he said, I will make you a new stew every month for the next 10 years, you're like, dumb. Don't do it. Right? Like, the value of the two things is nowhere close to equal. It's nowhere, anywhere in the neighborhood of reasonable. So, to Jacob's credit, like, at least the thing he wanted and had his eyes set on was something valuable and worth having. So he's shrewd and trying to take advantage of his brother because his brother has something valuable worth having. And so he uses his hunger against him, and he would exploit his brother's weakness to get something he was not going to have any other way. So here's the other thing. Jacob's the deceiver, right? And by definition, deceiver means I'm kind of leading you astray. I'm tricking you. But in this case, Jacob's not using deception at all. He's actually straight up out front saying, Here's what I want. Just your lousy birthright, which is of no use to you right now. You're hungry. You need to eat. You don't need your birthright, but you do need to eat. And so, again, here's Jacob setting everything up. But ironically, Esau knows something about hunting, doesn't he? He knows about trying to lure prey. He knows about waiting for the right opportunity. He knows about knowing when to take your shot. Like, he's a hunter. And here his brother is hunting him. And he doesn't see it. So just like that, he comes in, wants a bowl of soup. Esau is ready to trade the most valuable and important possession of his life for a bowl of the stew. But again, he's hungry, and that is all he sees right now. And probably the most bizarre thing of all of this, when we read it and you're like, that is so dumb, is it's the temporary nature of the soup and the permanent, like the rest of your life nature of the birthright. And so we immediately see how whacked and out of balance it is, and like, what? What is that? And Esau winds up trading his birthright for this bowl of stew. And here's what's crazy, right? And here's why we know it's crazy when we read it. Because in a few hours, he's going to be hungry again. He traded his birthright, not even thinking through that in just a few hours, he's going to be looking for his next meal. So he just traded something that he would have the rest of his life for something that would only relieve his hunger temporarily, but he would be hungry again. So it would meet an immediate desire, but it would be very temporary. So something permanent for something temporary. Something large for something really small. It's kind of weird, right? And again, so when we read this story, we're like, I don't even know what that is, but that's just crazy. What's going on there? Like, who would do this? Who would fall for that? Like, that is so ridiculous. And so Esau does. He goes all in. He swears an oath to his brother and gets the soup to satisfy his immediate craving. And we read that Esau ate the meal, and then he just got up and left. So he ate, he drank, he got up, he left, boom, 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 boom. He has just traded a bowl of soup and some bread for his birthright. So prior to walking into that tent, he had the birthright. Jacob had the soup. When he exits the tent, Jacob has the birthright, and he enjoyed some soup. And so it's such an easy question. Who got the better part of that deal? Like, it's so obvious, right? That Jacob by far got the better part of the deal. But here's what's crazy. They both got what they wanted. I mean, Esau got what he wanted. He was hungry, and he wanted to fill his belly. Jacob got what he wanted. He wanted the birthright. It's strange, though, because Jacob got the better part of the deal by a long shot. Like, it's not even close. It's not even hard for anybody to discern that. And so part of what strikes us so weird and odd as we read this passage is like, who would go for that? Like, how does he not see it? Like, when did it hit Esau? Like, what was I thinking? Did it hit him while he was eating it? Did it hit him when he exited the tent? Did he hit him the next time he was hungry? Like, wait, what was I thinking? And how? How did Esau get duped so easily? Like, how does this happen? So the few things we learn about Esau. One, he was impulsive. So that means you act without thinking, or you make decisions without really thinking it through. So we can see that's true of Esau right away. 2, we can see that he is caught up in the moment. And so he fails to look ahead. And 3, he's got a desire and he wants immediate gratification. So he is driven by his appetite. So this is how he got taken advantage of. So his impulsiveness, his living for the moment, and the need for instant gratification would cost him dearly. And weirdly, somehow he never saw the inequity of the trade. So here's what I want us to do as we kind of land this thing. It's so easy when we step into these passages to be like, Esau, you're a moron. Like, what did you just do? Like, and here's where I want us to pause and step back. Because what I want us to see is the whole thing that happened with Jacob and Esau. Listen, it is the very script and pattern of most of our temptations. Weird, right? Because we read it and we're like, so dumb. And yet, it is the standard pattern and the standard script for most of our temptations. Here's the script. Act now. Don't worry about the future. Live for the moment. And if you want something, why should you have to wait? Just go get it. It is the standard script of temptation. Enjoy the moment. Don't think, just do. Don't worry about the future. Don't think about consequences. Don't worry about what it costs. It's probably not going to cost that anyway. Like, why should you not have what you want? You deserve it. You need it. Really. If you want it, you should have it. It's easy for us to separate ourselves from Esau. And maybe he was a little more gullible and vulnerable than the average person. But I think we really have to stop and see the script. That we all can be vulnerable to Esau's thinking. The truth is, if we were to tell our stories of some of our biggest regrets, it would be somewhere along the lines of trading soup for a birthright. Like things that we chose or made decisions on that you can't take back and that had a lasting impact. There's someone I know and love. She's older now. But when she was a teenager, she had a one-night stand. She went to a bar, winds up going home with a guy. She gets pregnant. She tries to do the right thing, and she says, okay, so I'm going to marry this guy. She marries a guy who is just crazy. Manipulative, controlling, twisted, like the stuff of movies, right? And here's the consequences of one decision she made when she was a teenager, like that would last the rest of her life. She would have a couple of daughters who would be abused by that man. She would be abused by that man. He would leave her penniless and trying to figure out how she's going to make it to the next day. And it all comes back to one decision. And I would venture to guess that some of you can tell similar stories. Some of you may have similar stories. Like we can recount sad story after sad story. We sometimes forget that temptation ultimately is about being caught up in a moment. And when we find ourselves in those places, if we cannot see beyond that moment, if we cannot play it out and see where it might go, like there are huge consequences. And so here are the stories that we know are true. We know that marriages have imploded this way, haven't they? We know that families have been destroyed this way. We know that careers have ended. We know that companies have gone under. We know that opportunities for future have been squandered because of these kinds of trades, these kinds of temptations. Think about addictions. Many of our addictions started when we were young, right? In the church I pastored previously in Washington, one of the moms in the church had a son who began using drugs when he was 14 years old. He's in his mid-40s now. He's been in and out of rehab countless times. He has stolen from his family. He has been living on the streets. He has had moments where he gets ahead and then moments where he gives in again. He's in his mid-40s now, something he started when he was 14 years old. And here's the thing. Like when he was 14 and first started dabbling, I promise you he never imagined that that would be his story when he's 45. That's the nature of what we're talking about. And again, you know these stories. Some of them are yours. Financial trouble, fractured relationships, destroyed families, even jail time, all come from foolish, unguarded moments. And so what I want us to see is when we look at the story of Jacob and Esau and the soup and say that is so stupid, that we're being presented with something that is very real and very human. That if we get caught up in a moment and can't think beyond it, that we can find ourselves with a new trajectory. It's the principle of sowing and reaping, but we don't always know when we sow what we're going to reap. We tend to think of sowing and reaping as a very linear thing, like you do this, you get this. And while that is true, in some cases, you do this, you get this, 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 and this, right? So the challenge is for us to somehow in that moment stop, pray, think, look ahead, to say, where does this potentially go? I'm speculating again, so I always want you to know when I'm speculating and I'm not just following Scripture, but these are the kind of questions I wind up asking. But do you think Esau had any pause when his brother proposed the trade? I'm going to guess he did. I can't imagine that you immediately saw that and thought, I think that's a great deal. But just like any of us, you can have the pause and then override it almost immediately, can't you? And if Esau had a pause, he quickly pushed it aside and explained it away. Right? So here's some of the potential logic. This is me thinking. Like maybe thinking, Jacob would never really hold me to that. Like my birthright for a bowl of soup. He's never really going to hold me to that. Or, yeah, I mean, he's making me swear an oath, and that does seem a little overkill, but I'm sure he's just messing with me. You know, and the soup does smell amazing. Like, in the middle of the temptation, if we fail to see the cost or the potential costs and just live in the moment, we can make some awful exchanges, can't we? And Esau just failed to see beyond the smell of soup and his desire to eat. So not only did he not look ahead, but Esau failed to see what was really valuable and important. Esau ate the meal, got up and left, and here's what we're told, that he showed contempt for his rights as the firstborn. So he treated his birthright as something small and unimportant, of little value, comparable, at least at that moment, to some soup and some bread. And by contrast, on the other side, he treated the soup like it was something of immense value, comparable, well, to say a birthright. That's the thinking in those kinds of places. And so we're told that he showed disregard or contempt for his birthright, the privileges that were his for simply being the firstborn. But he was hungry and he wanted the soup. And so that didn't seem very valuable to him at the time. So when we're tempted, when we want what we want, here's what's leading the way. Desire. It is the main thing. And while we want what we want, at the same time, we magnify that. We oversell the things that we want as if they're bigger and more important and better. And how many times in your life have you thought something was going to do this, and instead it felt like something really small? Or, like Esau, you went ahead and made the trade for the bowl of soup only to find you were wanting something more shortly after. That is the story of Jacob and Esau. And it's not just a crazy story of a man who is so dumb that he fell for it, but it's the story that depicts all of us. That all of us have the potential to trade something significant for something small if we're caught up in a moment. Here's what I hope, that if you saw this on the flannel graph one day, that maybe there's a new life to it, and maybe, while you always thought Esau was stupid, that maybe you're a little bit more compassionately saying, oh, he's so human. And I am scary, similar to Esau. See, in temptation, the deceiver is going to try to get you focused on your immediate desires and keep you from looking ahead to anything else. He's going to present you with unreasonable and ridiculous proposals that we find strangely appealing. And even while we can second guess, we can quickly override that and determine that whatever potential costs are out there are probably not going to be the actual costs, and we bank on it. And again, standard script for temptation. So when we read this story from the outside, and this is true of anybody else's temptation, if it's not a temptation for you, you see it for as foolish and silly as it is, don't you? Like, how could you fall for that? But when it's your temptation, anybody else on the outside who's not feeling it would also look at you and me and say, really? How could you fall for that? When it's our desires, when it's what we want, weirdly it seems so reasonable even when it's not. In fact, here's what we really know from this story and from our own. When we're in temptation, reason rarely factors in if we give in. So here's my question for you. Where have you seen this script play out in your life? Or where could this script potentially have played out, but mercifully it didn't? Where have you been tempted to trade something valuable for something temporary? what may be the consequences of some of the things before you. So here's the thing, and just the last thing. As we're going to follow Jacob's story, not Esau. But Esau is a critical part here for the first couple weeks. But here's one of the things I want you to know about Esau. So even in his foolishness, you're going to see at the end of the story that he did okay for himself. That he still managed to be blessed, is how we would put it. And Jacob, even though he was a deceiver, would still be blessed by God. Now, both of these men paid steep prices, Esau for his foolishness, Jacob for his deception. They both had their share of misery, but also blessings, as you will see at the end of the story. And so here's the caution. Like, we look at the story, and we say, okay, so Esau, that was really dumb. And Jacob, you should have never done that. But in the end, you both did all right. And this is the kind of thing that the deceiver whispers to us in our temptation, is they'll point to other people and say, I mean, they did all right? They did this and it wasn't a problem, or they did this and it wasn't a problem. And so again, like, don't focus on the consequences. Stay focused on what you want. We are weirdly susceptible to these lines of thinking. And so as smart, capable, and gifted as you may be, we are also capable of deceiving and being deceived. We're capable of manipulation and wild foolishness. Here's what I love, that the Bible doesn't hide this. Like, it doesn't gloss over it. We don't get a picture of Jacob as one of the pillars, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We don't get this sanitized picture of Jacob like, hey, here's a guy who just kept honoring God and he did well for himself. We get a picture of a man who was a mess, who didn't trust God, who kept trying to find his way, heel grabbing to the top. And it's there in Scripture for us to see. And here's what I want you to take away. And this is why we need the gospel. Because we are all capable of being Jacob and Esau. We're capable of being the deceiver, and we're capable of being the deceived. And as we close, we're going to sing along with the song, Amazing Grace.